is on I-Star organizations. Now, you might be wondering what is I-Star. I'm not going to explain. The panel will explain themselves directly what this I-Star is. Now, I-Star organizations have played a very important part, especially in the events leading to the INA transition, which I think we have not mentioned in sufficient, we've not dealt with it in sufficient depth. So perhaps this panel can address the gap and also in the process explain the strategic grouping of these I-Star organizations. So I request Dr. Govind to come on stage, and also Samiran, Olivier, Subhashish, and T. Santosh from the ministry. Come on stage. So I request Dr. Govind to moderate the session.
While we are all together.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this session is going to be on the I-Star organizations, the global and regional perspective. I hope you are aware of this I-Star organizations, which is a loose term to describe the organizations that share the responsibilities for coordinating the internet technical infrastructure. They are ICANN, the RIR's Regional Internet Registries, ISOC, Internet Engineering Task Force, Internet Architecture Board, W3C, and the regional associations of country code top level domains. So these are the bunch of organizations, though it has clubbed into one, but each one of these organizations play a very, very critical role in the entire ecosystem of the internet and internet governance. As you can see from here, the RIRs do the APNIC, AFRINIC. In the previous session, Sunny must have done that. The IP address allocations of the 5 continents of the world. And ICANN is there, Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers. ISOC, Internet Society. ISOC came 1992. We are completing 26 years, Subhashi.
Yeah.
And ICANN came in 1998. We are some 20 years in that. IETF is, I think, much before that, before 1992, because it's a technical protocol. 1988. So you can see how the internet evolved over the years. The ICANN, the IETF, the basic protocol and things, then the Internet Architecture Board, which works on the architectural aspect of the internet, how this has to be worked out, and the regional associations of country code top level domains like .in, APTLDs and CCTLDs for .in here in India. So we have a large panel here compared to the earlier panels. We have Samiran from ICANN India Chief here, Mr. T. Santosh, who is the director in the ministry looking after the internet governance. Here, Subhashish, who is the Asia Pacific Chief Bureau of the ISOC.
No. I'm the Chapter Development Manager.
Chapter Development Manager. Doesn't And Olivier is ISOC UK.
Yeah, chair of ISOC England actually. No, UK now actually. You're right. Yes. It started out as ISOC London, then it became ISOC England, then it became ISOC UK England, and then people were very confused in England. And now we just got told we could be called ISOC UK, and now we're Brexiting, so I have no idea.
So let it be all, so we have a very eminent panelist here to, tell you what I would like them to say in the first 5 minutes is what are the global perspective of these organizations which are globally working for the openness and the connectedness of the internet globally, and how the regional perspective one has to bring in the local context. Because global vision is something, but regionally how will you bring? Like suppose you are to work on the ISOC. So ISOC vision is one thing, but ISOC chapters in the locally, like this ISOC chapter, Delhi, Trivandrum, Calcutta, Mumbai, is bringing this inSIG 2018. So you can see, unless you have this kind of discussions locally here, you can't reach to the global perspective. You have to understand those kind of things. You have to have a local, understanding of the all aspects. Then you can go to participate in these organizations which are there. So before much ado on that, I would begin with Mr. Samiran. If you can start with the perspective on this two aspects.
Thank you, Dr. Govind. I think what I'm going to do is share some, what I call stream of consciousness, which is my sense of how history was created, and Bernard, please do correct me. And Subhash and Santosh as we go. So, as the internet evolved, and it all started when the founding fathers and pioneers of the system were kind of trying to create a network which was stable, which was replicable, which could expand. Along the way came the process of establishing standards organizations which would do certain work. The unique bit about all of this is no one was waiting for someone else to do something. They were all working together. And I'm not saying that it was all very polite and hunky-dory and nobody fought. I'm sure there must have been some good arguments and, to create all of this. But the fact is, it evolved in a certain manner. And at some point, even before many other things happened, IITF got formed, where standards were being, because many protocols were being written. In fact, anecdotally, I can say that RFP 0001 was written by, was actually authored by my previous chairperson, Dr. Steve Crocker. And when he wrote that, he wrote a protocol, which, and many years later, actually 10 years ago or 15 years ago, he wrote an article about it in New York Times, in which he described how he wrote this and why he wrote it, and in which he simply says that, look, I was the youngest of the team, and my job was to take notes. But I realized that because my team was working in one place and there was another team working in the University of Utah, somewhere else, I needed to make sure that we were talking to each other, and therefore I started making note of the protocol that we were writing and sharing with them. That was the basis of the request for proposals, and that's how it was. And that protocol is not valid anymore, but the point is, this standardization process started in the late 80s, and at some point, it was thought that names and numbers should be looked at by a separate organization, and that's where I came in. So I think that's a little bit of history, but my sense is the perspective of these I-STAR organizations is really that of cooperation and collaboration. We all work with each other. At some point we connect, and we're able to keep the internet going the way it is going. And we deal with the challenges together, and there are strengths that each organization brings to the table, and then they are dealt with. And if I were to bring that down to a local or regional level, it shouldn't be any different. It should not really be any different. We should all be collaborating to build this community, whether it's in India, whether it's in the region, and to strengthen it with our knowledge and experience, and of course bring the best practices. So I think
Yes. Thank you, Samira. We move on to Mr. Subhashish, the ISOC, which is Internet Society, which is came much before not 6 years before the ICANN. So how do you perceive this entire internet ecosystem and the perspectives today, and what are their view in that particular?
So even though I represent the oldest organization, I'm youngest in the panel. So I might say things which are wrong, and please forgive me for that if I do that. Internet Society is a cause-driven organization, and the cause is what Olaf mentioned a couple of times before: to create an open, globally connected, trustworthy, secure internet for everyone. And so how do you do that, right? How do you do that? Because the internet is a very complex architecture. It was created by founding fathers and not founding parents, as Samir mentioned. And the reason is it was actually a patriarchal system that was created long back. It's becoming more open and collaborative and inclusive over the time, but it has a long way to go. So where does ISOC position, ISOC of the Internet Society positions itself? So during 2008, I'm going to read a couple of anecdotes because they are very useful. There are 4 themes during the 2008 IIIT that happened in Hyderabad, and also inSIG was sort of born around, inspired from that, and a lot of deliberations happened and so on. There were 4 major parts of that theme. Those were reaching the next billion. The second one is promoting cybersecurity and trust. And then the last one, the 4th one, is managing critical internet resources. ISOC does it all today. This year particularly, there were 4 campaigns that ISOC has, and the first one, reaching the next billion, the community networks, is enabling communities across the world to access the internet. And there are places in the world that don't even have electricity, and Internet Society and its partners have enabled those people to access the internet. I visited one earlier this year in Nepal, and the place was literally, there was literally nothing in that place because of the earthquake, and the community networks that exist today enables a lot of students, a lot of young students to do their practical work when they learn the theory in their schools. And the schools don't even have computers, and they teach about computers and the internet. So it's very inspiring to see those practical actions. In my previous life, I was working with Wikipedia and Mozilla, and those communities were very practical oriented. They have very little discussions, but a lot of practical action. So I'm sort of transitioning from that community to this community, and I see these really wonderful discussions that are happening on the table. So the multi-stakeholder advisory group, or MAG, that was created on the May 17, 2005 by Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General of UN. So around that time, Marcus Kammer, who was the Vice President for Public Policy at Internet Society, he was brought in to have IGF, and then it was Lynn St. Armour, who was also the President and CEO of ISOC for a long time, and she contributed a lot for the larger internet architecture and building the core of the internet and strengthening the core of the internet. I'm going to share a couple of anecdotes from the speech that she gave in ISOC. She focused on 4 major aspects: shared values, the multi-stakeholder model, open standards and permissionless internet. The quote that she gave, that was part of her speech, was, "The internet is a network of tens of thousands of networks, drawing overall resilience from distributed responsibility." And that sort of is reflected in all the work that the Internet Society does today. There is the IGF Ambassador Program. So those of you are aware of that would apply for that and become selected and attend IGF. That's one of the possibilities for all of you who work out of this room tomorrow after end of this program. There is one IGF ambassador who has been selected this year, and that's Priyatosh Jana, who is part of the India Kolkata chapter. And I would request to Priyatosh to speak about the inspiration and what made him apply in the first place.
Big thanks to ISOC. Actually, I had the name at 2010. I'm being the member from 2010. Okay. So generally, I'm teaching. I used to teach IANA, ICANN, but I do not have any idea what the working principles and what the details about IANA and ICANN. Actually, when I attended APSIG at 2016, Bangkok, so the APSIG lays the foundation of my knowledge, and few words at that time was the over of my head. That's ICANN, RIR. So these the terms are totally unknown to me. So now then I started to reading what is the even if you can go through the ICANN website and ISO website, lots of learning materials are there. I started reading and prepared myself. So for the questionnaire, what they have been asking for the application, and think about what to write and how I will be representing the community. So finally, I don't know, I was really surprised when I got the selection mail. So thanks to IJOB. And actually, one sentence I believe, necessity is the mother of invention. Actually, once if you really try to get, then definitely you have the way to get it. And especially thanks to ISO Kolkata, they have catapulted my knowledge and promote me how to work with in a multi-stakeholder model. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash.
So now you are to Mr. P. Santosh, who is director in the ministry and who is in the Internet Governance Division, where I think he dealt with all the stars, high-star institutions. So my question would be, how do you look at these being a government? How these institutions have impacted the government policies and those kind of things, starting from ICANN, IGF. How it will help in making various policy formulations in the digital India or in the other policies of the government?
Thank you, Govind sir. So, good evening, colleagues and friends over here. So, I think you have been here for the 2 days meeting. On the 0th day, few people were also there. But today is the second day. You must have gone through the various sessions related to internet governance structures, cyber security issues, and today, right now, the session is on ISTAR organization. So I think I am the old man out over here because I don't have an I. I'm from the government. Yes, I belong from India. Okay. Now, our association with all the ISTAR organization is sir with Dr. Govind then was looking at the matters in the government of India. During 2005, the changes happened in government, wherein which NIXI was formed, that is called National Internet Exchange of India, in which government mandated the responsibility for the operation of internet exchanges points in India. So there were 5 at that time. At present it is around 7. Then adding up, we got country code top level domain from ICANN, that is our .in. So same, the NIXI was operating it under the administration of the ministry, that is Ministry of Electronics and IT. Then came the RIRs, that is, you can call it as a National Internet Registry, or we call it IRIN. That responsibility was also provided to the NICSI by Government of India. So these were the three operations which, under the behest of Government of India, National Internet Exchange of India was doing. Then there was a sudden transition during 2005 itself. So when the first IGF meeting was held, and before that, you might know about the history. During 2004, there was a meeting at Geneva, in which the UN Secretary General took a decision that, okay, there should be some discussion on the public policy issues. So there are two things which on internet governance the people over here should understand. One is on technical aspects, and then the other one is on the policy aspects. So on the policy aspects, as you are aware, or probably you would like to know more about that, it is the UN processes, which is mainly on internet government forum, which is happening for the past from 2005-10. So around 12 years it is happening. So during the 2015 UNGA meeting, it was decided to extend for further 10 years. So it is also happening next month again at Paris. So that is the public policy issues which is being discussed around internet governance. Now, yes, Government of India was very much contributing during that process. Then the important I-STAR organization like ICANN, ISOC, IETF, we were also getting associated with this. So during 2015, our Honorable Minister Sri Ravi Shankar Prasad, during his video message at Buenos Aires, declared that we also, Government of India, is taking a multi-stakeholder approach on the matters related to internet governance. From there on, Government of India was contributing, collaborating a lot with ICANN. Due to that, we had the 57th ICANN meeting at Hyderabad during November. It was 7 days week, which got a record participation of around 3,000 participants, of which 2,000 were from overseas countries. So that is a record participation till date, which has happened in 2016. And yes, Government of India, after taking the multi-stakeholder approach, had at about 15 to 18 multi-stakeholder discussions on INR transition, ICANN accountability. So this happened during the period 2014. So we had 10 to 15 meetings with various stakeholders, including academia, civil society, and industry, and we also made our comments. So parallelly, that UNGA issue on IGF was also going, and we were also contributing there also. So Government of India, with the help of other stakeholders, were and are contributing to all the issues, and Government of India is actively participating in Internet Engineering Task Force. So I am seeing familiar faces who are Priyataush is one of the IETF fellow of one of the projects funded by the Government of India. So coming back to what Government of India has the association with, say ICANN, yes, we have conducted ICANN meeting over here. And being part of the Government Advisory Committee, we have a day-to-day or maybe a week-to-week meeting with the ICANN representative in India on various issues. On ISOC, yes, we are actively engaged with all the chapters. At present, I came to know that there is a new chapter which is coming from Hyderabad, yeah. So the count right now is 6. Presently it is 6.
Yeah.
And I think then adding up Hyderabad, it will be 7, and you would like to know? in India, we are having the highest chapters among the global thing. So thanks for the ISOC people, who are associated from various, from the north, south. They are working like hard, and we have funded a project to ISOC Kolkata for active participation in IETF. It was a 1-year project in which they went to various colleges, gave capacity building related to what is IETF all about. They prepared content, and they also gave fellowship under the project, in which 4 people went to a face-to-face meeting of IETF. And ISOC chapters have also given us a proposal to Government of India, in which, say, suppose the submarine cables, wherein which the 95% of the internet traffic is coming up, is disconnected due to some or other unforeseen situation, how the internet will function. So, we are seeing the light of that project. Now, coming to IETF, we have been submitting our internet draft over there on various issues like the sessions which we had earlier, like universal acceptance. So, we are giving, we along with various other stakeholders are providing internet draft over there. So, I have a request to all the technical people over here. You need to concentrate a bit more in Internet Engineering Task Force. There are many working groups over there, and the interested working groups, you have to concentrate and give your comments on that, so that since we have the strength in our human resource, we need to come up with more internet standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Santosh, for giving a perspective of the government and how government is, making use of these I-Star organizations to come up with the various technology and standards and various infrastructure issues in the country. I will try to give us a perspective, the global perspective and the regional perspective, how it is.
Don't know, I need to discuss it.
How do you look at these I-Star organizations, and including, I think, INA?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the things that I find difficult to put together is put together my own feelings and my own views with the views of the UK community and what's happening in the UK. And I sometimes feel like the people in the country that I chair a chapter in don't pay enough attention to what's going on at these meetings, especially ICANN, IETF and so on, because it's always the same number of people, the same group of people that are involved in all this, and everyone else is very busy doing other things and not actually busy enough looking at the standards and the different legislation that might go and affect them. That being said, in the UK there are a number of things which I think are working rather well. The first one is with regards to things that are taking place at the IGF, Internet Governance Forum, but also at some of the ITU meetings. The government has put together a multi-stakeholder advisory group on Internet governance, a MAGIG, which is a group of about 40 to 60 people picked by the government, both from civil society organizations, but also technical community and several companies, in order to be able to have direct advice on all of these issues, and that includes, of course, the I-Star organizations into the policies that the government is then going to roll out, and especially in its involvement in IGF, as I said, and in ITU issues. It's actually even had delegations that were multi-stakeholder in scope, and in fact even multinational in scope, and that it wasn't only Brits. As a Frenchman, I was accepted. Can you imagine Britain accepting a Frenchman under the UK flag is one of these things that breaks the 100 Years' War, but they've managed to finally say yes to this, and they've had people from experts from around the world to help them in being able to tackle all of these issues, which are all coming at the same time and are extremely diverse for the government to just be able to tackle by themselves. Now, speaking about the ISTAR organizations, I think that, and I'm going to deviate slightly from the question, it's been mentioned before, but one of the core things of the ISTAR organizations is this common set of values that they all uphold. We're looking here at an internet that is user-centric, that is open, with open standards, open protocols, that is stable, of course, and a number of other core internet values or core principles. I think the Internet Society calls them core principles, that we have seen over the years being eroded by specific actions from either governments or certain manufacturers or certain large companies, global companies, that are somehow jostling these things around and that are making the internet less open and less open to innovation from new arrivals, kind of closing up the internet in order to keep it in the established players' hands for the time being. There's of course also this whole struggle between multi-stakeholder and multilateral, and all of the ISTAR organizations are very much pushing into the multi-stakeholder corner, and this is one of the reasons why many of these organizations are multi-stakeholder themselves and are open with an open membership, and certainly most of their meetings are open for anyone to take part in. Now that of course is disputed by some people. They say, well, you know what, it's really actually all US-led, and it's one of these things where it's the old boys club, you know, you're part of the club, you know someone in there, they'll let you in, and then you don't know anybody in there, and then you'll just be kept out. And this is a criticism I've heard on many internet governance forums, and ICANN is sometimes seen as being this big organization with big walls around it, and it's, of course, that couldn't be further from the truth. You can just go turn up at an ICANN meeting, and strangely enough, you can actually go in the public meeting, go straight to the mic, introduce themselves, and say what your problem is or what you would like to have fixed. You could go in any of the meetings that are taking place there and ask for the floor, and in general, I would say 99.9% of the time, the chair would pass you and would let you speak. A specific representative from a country that was a bit disruptful at the World Conference on International Telecommunications in 2012 first was really quite negative about ICANN, and finally decided to go to an ICANN meeting and join the Government Advisory Committee. And after a couple of ICANN meetings, I was really amazed that there had been some people there for 5-8 years, and he had just been to 2 ICANN meetings, and he was given the floor like everyone else, and he didn't have to queue more than everyone else, and people listened to him as well, which is really amazing. And in some other circles, that's not the case. You need there's a real hierarchy on how much you can say and how much you can do. Now, moving on to the INS stewardship transition, a second criticism of ICANN and of the whole system as it was then, was that the root, which at the time was run by IANA, well, IANA was actually a separate department, and ICANN is a US-based corporation, not-for-profit, based in California, and so one could say, well, this is kind of US government hands in some way, because part of the process by which the route was being run and the quality of service for the route updates was that it had to go through the US Department of Commerce. And the US Department of Commerce, the NTIA, National Telecommunication Infrastructure Administration, had the right to block any changes to the route. And this was originally put there just to make sure that there was stability and that one wasn't going to start adding and deleting things in the route without proper and due process. But of course, the moment you mention USA, oh well, it becomes very political. Which I understand, it's absolutely fair comment. And Larry Strickling, the then Undersecretary for Commerce, the chair of NTIA, was in all these meetings, IGF meetings and other meetings, and of course heard the criticism. And and I was going to go into the anecdotal stage quickly. One of the things is during his last year of tenure, or last 2 years of tenure, he'd been around in NTIA for a while, and he said, well, what am I going to do that is going to actually really benefit the internet? And having heard this criticism so many times that, the internet is really controlled by the US. And of course, there was never really any instance of the US blocking, they never blocked off Cuba or North Korea or any of these countries that they weren't friendly with, or Iran, for example. One of the criticisms was this, and he thought, well, maybe we can try and see if we can have some kind of a transition so that the U.S. government relinquishes that stewardship that it has over the route, that function that it just has to say, yeah, the process has been followed, take the box. And so shortly before the Internet Governance Forum in Istanbul, which is that 2015? 14. Oh God, this is such a, it goes so quickly. Shortly before the Internet Governance Forum in Istanbul, NTIA, through Larry Strickling, wrote one of these wonderful letters that you read and you think, oh my goodness, he's just said that. And you just think, oh, does that mean more work for us? And that indeed meant more work, because the letter was worded, and I don't have it in front of me, but from memory it basically said, calling upon the international multi-stakeholder communities, ICANN and multi-stakeholder communities, to come up with some system, something to replace the stewardship of the US government. Point. Okay, what do we do? Not an easy task here. So a number of people basically sort of came back officially and asked, well, so what do you want us to do? And the answer was, do as you wish. It's in your hands now. You work out some plan, something to be able to find a solution to this and to replace our function. So the first thing that was done was to put together a large group and looking at really the main three stakeholder groups that were affected. So IANA deals with three things. Numbers, so the IP addresses, and that of course works with the regional internet registries. It also has a repository for protocols, and the protocols are actually part of the what the IETF actually has put together. And the third registry, the third database that it has is of course the root of domain names, top-level domains, and that's ICANN. Now, in the case of regional internet registries and in the case of the Internet Engineering Task Force, the ball was sent over to them and said, okay, you find out a solution within your ranks. And there wasn't really much of a problem because you had a simple case of a customer, so let's say the IETF, and a supplier, ICANN. So you can do a contract between the two and job done. In the case of the domain names, it was a bit more difficult because you would have the supplier, so that's IANA, part of ICANN, and the customer, ICANN. How are we going to sign a thing with ourselves, a contract with ourselves? So that was a bit more complicated, and one of the things which was a problem was, what if the ICANN board goes rogue, or what if the ICANN decides to suddenly multiply the prices for top-level domains, or the board decides to start deleting half of the domain names on the list, because on the top-level domains on the list, because it doesn't like them. What kind of a safeguard do we have as a community and as the world? And so during the Internet Governance Forum in Istanbul, there was a breakfast meeting that was put together, that was organized at short notice with all of the ICANN, people that came from ICANN. And we're not talking just about the top-level people from the different parts of ICANN, but actually participants in ICANN that had indicated they were in Istanbul and said, please join us for a nice breakfast meeting where we're going to be talking about this IANA stewardship thing, stewardship transition of some sort. So everyone went up over to the top of the Hilton Hotel, or Intercontinental Hotel in Istanbul, and I don't think that the board members who were present, and especially not the CEO at the time, Fadi Shahade, who was quite an energetic person and always looking forward and saying, I think we should do this, and that. Don't think they were quite ready to hear what the community said, which basically was the community sat down, they came up with a plan and said, okay, so the board is going to go and ask the different communities what they want, and you do a working group, then you give us the recommendations, and then we will decide what to do with the recommendations, and then we'll have the final plan ready that we'll give back to NTIA. And the point-blank answer from the community at the time was, no way, we want to make the plan, and we want you to have absolutely no idea of what the plan is going to be, and to have no way of saying no to what the plan is going to be, because we don't trust you guys. Oh yes, you see, you can be a really nice person, and you can be trusted for years in the ICANN community. The moment you are selected to be on the board, you are the enemy. You are the evil. You become evil overnight. Strangely enough, you still are the same person, but in the eyes of the community, you're really like. And this level of distrust is funny because in one way it's actually quite good because it brings accountability and it doesn't actually bring complacency where you say, well, they're all our friends on the board, they can do whatever they want, we trust them. So they decided So the community came back and said, well, never is that going to happen. And so we finally ended up, to cut a long story short, because it ended up as being something that lasted a couple of years. There was a working group that was created in ICANN called the Cross-Community Working Group on IANA Stewardship Transition. There were a set number of representatives from each one of the component organizations of ICANN, so the different supporting organizations, addresses, names, and etc., and then the different advisory committees, and they came up with a plan that they then submitted to ICANN. They also, because it was quite an extensive plan, they had help from legal advisors who cost an arm and a leg, but you had to pay for them because you needed this plan to actually be legal under US law and so on. And there was also a second part to this, which effectively said this plan is only valid if a number of things are also done for ICANN's accountability. And a certain number of measures that another working group will be working on that will effectively make sure that the ICANN board cannot overrule any of the things that we've put in the plan. Because you have a great plan, the board says yes, it goes through, and then of course at implementation the board can change everything and say, actually, you know what, you meant yes here, but actually we mean no, and change it altogether. And so it was quite a clever thing where basically the ICANN board, that are really the people that are in charge of ICANN and that have a fiduciary duty towards ICANN, are responsible and can be kicked out by the community if certain processes are used. So you can kick out a single board member, you can kick out the whole board if you think that they've done something really crazy. And it's, of course, the whole community has to come together to be able to do something like this. The community also has to agree now on the yearly ICANN budget, and if it doesn't agree to it, and then ICANN has to basically come up with a new budget and prepare a new budget. And the other thing also to safeguard what we now call post-transition IANA is the financial stability of post-transition IANA. So post-transition IANA that became public technical identifiers became a wholly owned subsidiary of ICANN. So there's this kind of a Chinese wall between the two, some independence, but they receive all of their money from ICANN, and they have to have their budget ready and allocated 6 months, I think, before the budget process for ICANN. So IANA or PTI will never run out of money, as long as ICANN lives, of course, but that's, touch wood. But ultimately, what you're looking at here is a system that might seem complicated, but actually has several levels of safeguards and is also self-sustaining. And there are a number of review teams, independent review teams that look at the performance of the IANA functions, look at the performance of PTI, look at and if another committee that is there, if things go wrong, it's quite an extensive plan. But what's important is that ultimately it has satisfied the idea of replacing the US government in this supervision role, and it still remains in the community and without a single organization, government, or company that controls the whole system. And I think that's important. The whole decentralized structure and the lack of control by a single organization is a real important safeguard in this. And I think I've said enough on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. I think the one point, I don't know if people are aware of this whole IANA transition process started after the Snowden revolution. He came out that your data is not safe, and the FBI. After that, this triggered the around the world people to think over whether why IANA should be under the U.S. Department of Commerce at that point of time. So that is the whole story.
Larry will of course dispute this. I did ask him the question. He said, "Of course not. Yeah, we don't know. Snowden is nothing." But there you go.
So before going to the audience, I will have one each question from the panelist here, that Samiran, how do you look at this global perspective of ICANN, how it is reaching to the national level or the regional level, if you measure in terms of the achievements or in terms of what the gains you see in this kind of role here? So may I ask that kind of question?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Govind. So, one of the challenges that we have at ICANN is it's not as if we have pots and pots of money, and as Bernard also mentioned, our budget is now determined by the community. You know, you can actually go online and take a look at what the next 2 years, how much money we can spend. It's roughly between 137 million and 139. And you know, if you take out the salaries from it, and if you take out the critical functions that we do from it, our role is also to answer one of Bernard's questions that he metaphorically put. He said that, look, you know, it's a closed club. Okay? So the fact that we have today a regional office in the APAC region, which has my colleague Dilpreet is from that office, the 30 people there supporting folks such as myself and the community at large in this region, is kind of an indication of how we have quote unquote internationalized. So yes, there was a time when ICANN only truly existed only in the United States. And though the people who were involved with ICANN at that time, and there's nothing wrong in it, they just thought, you know, we are a technical organization. Why do we need to go and meet people? Okay? And why should there be any requirement for, you know, engagement? I mean, there is a WHOIS, and you can look any network up on a WHOIS, and everyone talks to each other. So that's how, you know, the technical community thought. Obviously, this has changed, and it's changed for the better. That's why I'm sitting here, and you're sitting in this room listening to me patiently, and you know, we are so to just sum it up, the multi-stakeholder model is as good as the number of participants in it. Okay, the more diverse it is, the more vibrant it is, the better it is for you know, the internet ecosystem. So, and to that extent, and to that end, you know, there are community members in this room who've actually imbibed that spirit and have gone out and done work within, you know, India is a large country, but even regionally. So I'll just stop here, but the way we look at it is it's really important for us to be engaged and remove the barriers of understanding what we do as a technical organization.
Thank you, Samiran. Really, you know, your Brussels office and the Singapore office and the, I think, some African office and so many others have come popped up only after, I think, last couple of years.
Last 3 years.
3 years, you know, I still remember that ICANN used to, you know, the main criticism was this, that, you know, it is a US centric and all those kind of thing, but that thing is, perspective is completely changed after the, and especially after the IDNs kind of thing. Santosh, I would like to just briefly, if you can say, there one collaboration you can mention where the, you know, government benefited from the one of the lifestyle organization. You need not elaborate the whole thing, but just one example of that.
So again, people over here, you must have heard about the multilingual internet as well as universal acceptance steering group. So this terminology was coined only, say, 3 years before. I mean, there wasn't any such movement in the International Lifestyle Organization wherein which the emphasis was given to this so-called internationalized domain name. So we, in association with ICANN, could delegate, delegate all the 22 languages free of cost. So I thank ICANN to provide us .Bharat in each and every language, each and every constitution recognized 22 languages. So that is one thing which we got from ICANN. Besides that, there was a rule set panel which was created, which is called Neo-Brahmi Generation Panel, in which suppose dot Sharma is coming, how one should write Sharma in Hindi. So that kind of a rule set was created under the behest of ICANN, which is called Neo-Brahmi Generation Panel. So which has come up with rule sets for say around 7 scripts, and 2 more scripts are under process. The dates, I mean, one can give the public comments for, say, Tamil and another language.
So it's 8 plus 1.
Okay. So one can give a public comment, I mean the last date is November, so that is how government as well as India got benefit from ICANN. Thank you.
Thank you, Santosh. I think Santosh picked up the right thing, the .bharat domain name. I just recall the meeting in 2007 in ICANN, Los Angeles, where, the GAC was discussing about the ideas that initial stages, and then they said that each country will get one language, one script. Where, all the countries were having one language, one script, where India was having 22 languages and several scripts. So it was a big challenge for us to, make them understand that, no, you can't give one language to India, it has 22 official languages, and there will be a lot of, disputes within the country, if you don't come up with all the languages of the country. So I recall that, and Ravi Shankar was the GAC, member from India, and we were there, we convinced them that, look, our constitution says there are 22 languages, and it has to be obeyed that way, Home Ministry and all that. And then they agreed, yes, in this case we have to give 22 languages. Unlike China, there were several countries having one language, and here one country having several languages. That kind of distinction. Thank you. So now I open to the audience. The Satish Babu.
Is there a mic?
There's a mic right here.
Satish Babu, then Gulpreet.
She's there.
Thanks very much, Dr. Govind and the panelists for a very informative presentations. My question is that the whole INA transition was triggered by the Montevideo statement, which is the first time I've heard this term I-star. So at that point there was a lot of, what shall I say, goodwill between these organizations in pushing for the INA transition. However, after the transition, that goodwill, I'm not sure whether it continues in the same fashion or not. So I'd like to hear from anyone who's been involved with this as to what's happened after the transition. Is it holding tight as it was earlier? Thank you.
I'll be brave. I'll go for it. Look,
Yes.
it's very clear to me. I don't know what's happening outside the country. I'm head of India for ICANN. I'm very happy that ISOC has 1, 2, 3, 4, and plus 1, 5 chapters, and there are 1 or 2 more coming. And he says 10 minutes more. But the fact is, with a country like India, my work or ICANN's work is simplified with these chapters. So I look at the ISOC chapters as our partners. I really don't know what else is happening elsewhere, but and I've seen the same spirit of partnership in communities in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, as well as a fair bit in Bangladesh of late. So it's a very I'm probably wearing rose-tinted glasses, I don't know, but this is my view, my personal view.
Yeah, thanks for this question, Satish, and it's a tough one. I've sometimes asked myself the same question, and then I've looked back and thought, well, before all this INA stewardship transition, and we're looking here at about quite a while before, 2010, you had all these silos. So on the one side, you had the technologists, the IETF, and if you spoke to anyone at the IETF, they would tell you they would have a root canal done rather than go to an ICANN meeting, which was a little extreme, but I've been told that explicitly, and I said, right, okay. You'd go over to an ICANN meeting and you say, oh, why don't you go and talk to the people in IETF about this? And they say, what, idiot lawyers that, idiot engineers who have no understanding of how the world works. And I thought, okay, it's interesting. And so you'd look at basically each one of those communities, and there were absolute silos with very few people walking across from one to the other. the good thing of about this stewardship transition is it really got these different communities to talk to each other, and not just at the top level, which often is actually made up of interpersonal connections. So you have a couple of CEOs from the different organizations that have an affinity. They both like sailing and dogs, and finally they think, you know what, let's meet more often and let's make it a group of ourselves, and we can talk about things every few months, because that's actually how it sometimes happens. And so you have great synergy going on between the leaders, but then underneath that, the different troops, if you want, absolutely hate each other. Thankfully here, it actually got the troops to mingle with each other, and I've noticed in recent years that a number of people from the IETF have gone to ICANN meetings, have gone to Internet Governance Fora, and vice versa as well. We have some people in the regional internet registries or in ICANN that go over to IETF and so on. It started with a handful of individuals. There were people like Yari, then it went to the leadership, so people like Yari Arco, who was one of these real pioneers that went then to ICANN meetings and so on. And now we're actually even ending up with someone like Andrew Sullivan running ISOC. And that is actually one of these real amazing IETF people, but actually is also amazing on policy as well, and has been very contributing a lot over in ICANN. In addition to this, I think some of the more technical sides of ICANN have actually brought in more engineers. So the SSAC, Security and Stability Advisory Committee, has managed to bring in a number of technical people into the community, and that's actually how many of these people came in, like Patrick Feldstrom, etc., who was the chair of the SSAC. But you also have the IDN work. When it all started, and my reference for seeing how it all started was back in, I think it was in Egypt, at IGF in Egypt, and there was a chap from, what was his name again? Anyway, they were really at the beginning of the IDN project, and a number of technical people who were involved in IDN-ABIS, which was the IETF working group, then started doing things for ICANN as well. So I think that the collaboration is improving between the different communities. I don't think that maybe we're doing enough, politically speaking, when we have things like what might be happening in the ITU plenipotentiary in a couple of weeks' time. But then nobody really knows, and sometimes there is not enough coordination perhaps in what our values are. But this should improve now with the new leaders that are running the different organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Odina. Dilpreet?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Govind. So my colleague Samiran has actually presented the country perspective from India. And as he mentioned, I'm from APAC office in Singapore. So I just joined APAC office like 3 months ago, and I was invited by Dr. Govind to be on this panel, but I didn't feel so comfortable being on the panel. So I'm just going to add on to what Samiran has said. And fantastic inputs, by the way, by everyone here. I think we can really go away from this inSIG knowing so much about the internet and being able to spread it on to everyone else, because the truth is, regionally in Asia Pacific, there's still a lot of awareness that's not out there. And also, a lot of economies are not plugged in. India is very fortunate. You've got an awesome community going on. Samiran and his predecessor, if he had one, I'm not sure, has done a good job, as well as all the stakeholders sitting on the stage here and in the room. You've done an awesome job putting together a community. But I just came back from like Bangladesh, for example, where they're just starting out, and they've got their 10th in the world in terms of internet users. Can you believe that? But they're only just starting out in this whole internet governance thing. And they need a lot of capacity building, a lot of training and best practice sharing. So even I would like to urge you that within the economy here in India, you should also be thinking about SAARC region, for example. Like, how can you collaborate with other countries? I understand like Manmeet is plugged in with the Bangladeshi community, and he's kind of helping them out with the capacity building. But there are more of you in this room, so we can think about that as well. Like intra-regionally, how can we support fellow countries in the region? I mean, Sir Santosh has mentioned about the Neo Brahmi generation panel. Some of us are already in that panel. That's great. That is not just within India's work. We also include other countries, Bangladesh and whatsoever. So, all this work, we need to also think inter-regionally. And in this inSIG, we've got fellows from Afghanistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, so that's the beauty about the internet. It's not just, country or geographically bounded. But within Asia Pacific, we are seriously lagging behind. And we are like the biggest economies. We've got India and China with the biggest population, right? But we're not that well represented on the international stage, you know? Yeah, true, ICANN meetings are very daunting. I'll be going for my first one in like a few days' time, and I'm scared. I don't know what I'm going to be experiencing, but I believe that it's all very valuable and that it's going to be very enriching. And I've benefited so much from inSIG, you know, and I believe that if we continue being plugged in, we will continue to help our fellow, you know, communities, because I'm sure, like, you know, when you go back to Afghanistan, you're not just going to keep the information to yourself. You're going to want to like outreach to more people, spread it to whoever, you know. So let's try to like let's make a commitment here in inSIG, you know, that let's go back and let's spread this awareness about internet. Let's spread this awareness about the I-STAR organizations, because truth be told, we need you more than you need us, kind of thing, you know, because the multi-stakeholder model will not work without you, you know. I mean, ICANN will just be like a archaic organization. I mean, the staff would just be like sitting in our offices, like, you know, typing on our laptops if we didn't have you. Like, you know, because of you, I'm here, I'm able to travel, I'm able to engage with you, get you to participate in the policy processes, which is very complex. And I don't know all of it, but, you know, if you ask me a question, I'm going to definitely do my best to help you get into that process and, you know, be plugged in, because that's our role, that's Samiran's role, that's my role. We're here to facilitate that. But it's not going to be possible if you're not interested, you know? So it's a two-way process. So I hope you're not like intimidated about this I-STAR organizations. We very much need you to be part of it as well. Yeah, so it's not just like top down, we're not just talking down to you. It's a bottom-up approach, and yes.
Thank you, Dilpreet, for
Sorry.
I think we need community and I-STAR only need both each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that, you know, it's one-sided, it's both sides.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Fast. Yeah. Covered? Maybe very fast.
My question is to Mr. Santosh, and I don't think this area was really touched upon, or is it so relevant to I-STAR organizations. But I want to know to what extent I-STAR organizations are involved when a country is signing an international treaty, for example, like Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. So to what extent all these organizations advices or policies are taken into account, or influences are taken into account when government is signing such an important treaty. And secondly, when such treaty where there is a chance that a very sensitive portion or very sensitive data may be shared, so how do the government come up with a balance to maintain the balance between like the internet community and national security?
Yeah, the thing is that whether Budapest Convention is a multilateral process, because it has been taken by the ME, Ministry of External Affairs. So there it is all multilateral meeting, and if they want to consult, yes, there are consultation made, but not as such in internet governance area. So Budapest Convention could be, I mean, there will be many such verticals under Budapest Convention, whereas under internet governance, yes, we have consultation. That's the answer I can give, yeah.
Yeah, here last question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I think we can take the other questions offline, because now the time is really up.
I think half of my question was explained by Dilpreet, and thank you, ma'am, for the question. Actually, the question was that I know I don't have the responsible person from ICANN and ITF and all those organizations, but as Dilpreet mentioned, that the countries like Afghanistan, the countries like Bangladesh, the countries like Nepal, Bhutan, and all these countries, we need more help, we need more collaboration. Exactly the same thing happens. I have applied 3 times for ICANN, but not selected. And many people I know many people who are very qualified, and they're having experience, knowledge, and all this, what the criteria is explained by the ICANN, but I don't know. And even in 2 years back, ICANN, we had no one from Afghanistan. And this makes things very harsh. In Apni 42 in Colombo, we had a discussion on Bay of Bengal. That was the kind of thing where Myanmar was going to be the hub, and Sri Lanka, India, and Bangladesh was in the same question I put there. That guys, if this is ethnic and ethnic means regional, then we should include everyone. And the same thing, like we have Silk Route, which is a technological cable that's going to come from China through Afghanistan, and that's going to be a data, a kind of data route for the same as we had the Silk Route in the history. Like Afghanistan is very famous for the Silk Route. So in that route, we have from China to Afghanistan and Middle East, these countries, and so that's included. So if we think regional, of course, India is in another level, and of course, Sri Lanka is doing much better, same Bangladesh. But the countries like Afghanistan, the countries like Myanmar, Bhutan, and these countries need more consideration and support and for the collaboration, and we are very good in it. And the capacity is now developing, and if these organizations like ICANN and these people trust us, I'm sure we will be not much less than India or Pakistan in these platforms as well. So we need a chance, and we need to be given proper support from country to country. Maybe India and Afghanistan, the same. Thank you, India, and I must thank every foreign country. But yeah, on these platforms also as we need some support. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, specific to ICANN fellowships, unfortunately the way it works is Afghanistan is part of the Middle East structure. Sorry, it's part of the Middle East structure. But offline, I'm very happy to support you in trying to understand what makes the fellowship, the conversation we have internally when we give fellowships. It's a very tough one. Again, it's a matter of budgets, it's a matter of priorities, and there have been fellows from Afghanistan, but I'll give you a rhetorical question, okay? Just the way you have a developmental need and therefore you feel you should get X number of fellowship because you really need it. From India, for the sake of argument, I could say that India is such a large country, we also need a large number of fellows. So there is no end to that debate, you know. So, the real issue over here is for any community, whether it's from Afghanistan, whether it's from Sri Lanka, whether it's from India, to get engaged as much as possible, to also create forums locally, which then the I-STAR organizations can come and support you with, you know. I think that's one of the things that we really encourage, because at the end of the day, and it goes, okay, the lady sitting there now, it's changed, there's somebody else sitting there. You know, for a moment I thought something had been mixed in my food at lunch or something. but there's somebody else there. And she had a question. And her question was that, to Mr. Santosh, that, how do you, do this discussion around when you sign international treaties. Okay, now I just wanted to share this with you that none of the I-STAR organizations are above any national law. Okay, and therefore, and it goes back to what you were asking, therefore, you need to also build your own ecosystem and seek our support in building it. A fellowship is good, but you need to also bring us here. Time for next speaker, he says, is behind you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Samiran Gupta, Santosh, Subhashish, and Olivia for excellent discussion on this important topic for perspective of the global and the regional perspective. I thank again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Govind. I request Halima to come forward and give the gifts to two of the panelists who haven't received gifts earlier.
Otherwise, anything else.
You can
Come closer.
Thank you. Thank you. Wait, this way. Okay, one picture together. You can come. Thank you.
Thank you.